Hello, everybody. I'm Silva Harapetian. Welcome to another edition of the Silva Harapetian Show. I am so excited today. We're going to be talking about the movies. And my guest today in studio is Omar Benson Miller. He is an actor. He's a producer. He has been in movies like The Miracle at St. Anna, 8 Mile. He's been in TV shows like CSI Miami, Ballers, The Unicorn, which was one of my favorites.
They got us. I love The Unicorn.
I know, I love it too. True
it.
Lies, one of your most recent movies, an Italian movie called Naples to New York, which hasn't really made it to the States yet, but we'll talk about that.
It's stuck in Naples.
It's stuck in Naples. It's a great movie. And of course, most recently, Sinners. If you haven't been to the movie theaters yet, and if you haven't seen it, I suggest you buy yourself a ticket. You may not get an IMAX ticket because I think they're sold out for the last week, but get to the movie theaters and watch this movie. Thank you for being here.
No, thank you for having me.
This movie is, you used the word the other day, is mesmerizing, and it's mesmerizing to people.
Yeah.
Did you know that this is what it was going to be? And when did you know that?
No, I didn't know. To me, the big thing with creativity and creative actions is taking risk. You know, various risks which spawn various rewards, some of which work, some risks that don't work. So when I read the script and, you know, the big scene that everybody's talking about that I think seems like it's going to go down in cinema history with the past, present, and future, the ancestors to the present, to the descendants of the blues and of dance and of, you know, burning the roof down and all of that connection. When you read that on paper, it was like, wow, that's creative. That either is going to be awesome or it's going to fall flat. And to me, that's the appeal. The risk is the appeal, because I think what we're seeing with Sinners is that people are coming out of the house and going to the movies, despite usually staying home and watching on streaming and in their place, because the film is original and you don't know where this film is going to go. The trailers didn't tell you. Your friends could explain every single scene in this movie, and it still won't capture that feeling of the movie magic that takes place in this film. It's a very special, it's an experience. It's more of an immersive experience than it is just going to watch a movie.
People talk about, and you guys, when you were promoting the movie, purposely kept it very vague, because you do really have to go see it. Because if you call it a vampire movie, it's not. If you call it a horror movie, it's not. If you call it a musical, it is not. If you call it a period piece, it is not. It's all of those things, but just enough of those things to make it unique. Because if you just went a little bit too far on one of those genres, it would have a completely different effect.
This is where Ryan Coogler deserves all the kudos, is because this is a real, you know, we shot in New Orleans, and this is a real gumbo of genres. And in that, there's so much stuff that shouldn't work together that he found a way to put just the right pinch of this, just the right dash of this. And, you know, the audience is rewarding him with coming back over and over again. I was at an event last night, a movie event with other movie people, and no less than 10 people came up to me and told me they'd seen the film 3 times.
Wow.
Like it's the kind of thing that sits with you, and you think about it after you leave the theater, and you have to speak about it. It's a weird thing. It's a weird phenomenon.
Because it isn't just entertainment, and we'll get to the deeper meaning of things. And part of the reason I really wanted to do this interview after the movie came out, and we gave it some time for people to watch, because I really wanted to talk about some of the deeper layers of the movie. This movie was directed by Ryan Coogler.
Yep.
It was produced by our friend Sev Ohanian. Shout
Yeah.
out to Sev. I've known him for a while. And Proximity Media. This movie is a horror movie, a vampire movie. It's a period movie set in the 1930s. It
Yep.
follows two brothers who are twins. They've come back from Chicago back to Mississippi, and they set up a juke joint, which is kind of a club in those times. And then they're faced with some vampires, right? So
Yeah, I mean, there's more than that, but yeah, those are broad. Yeah, those are broad strokes,
right?
Of
but it also it depicts Black culture in that era.
Yep.
It depicts the resistance and identity in that era. It also really talks about good and bad.
Yeah. Well, another thing though to throw in, it depicts American culture. And this is why it's resonating with a lot of people across the board. The audience has been getting more and more diverse, which is great because it's set in the Jim Crow South, and yet it is strangely relevant today. It's a completely modern film that's set 90 years ago. Right. Which is very difficult to pull off, And so in that, there's a lot of representation in the film of Chinese Americans, Native Americans,
Irish immigrants. Immigrants in general.
Plain old white Southerners.
Right.
Everybody is repped in the film in the sense that there is some educational entertainment going on. But nothing is forced, nothing is preachy. The visuals are there and you make the call on what you take from the film.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things that I've been most excited about. It's because every morning somebody sends me on social media somebody else's personal fan art. And so it's become like this referendum on my career. They've done all these memes and cartoons and Legos connecting Sinners with 8 Mile and a freestyle rap I did in 8 Mile 22 years ago to this. And it's been wild. It's been wild. And it's been great. I saw Coogler talking about it the other day on the red carpet at the Met Gala. And they were asking him, what does it feel like? And he said the thing that he's taken away is just how creative people are.
Right.
Because the film has encouraged people to make their own art.
Right.
To go home and film their own versions of the scenes.
There's reenactment of the scene.
Yes.
And your scene, you trying to get inside the juke joint again, right?
Yeah.
That scene has been playing for some time, and people are reenacting some version of that scene.
Yes.
Everything from your 8 Mile rap to people reenacting at their front door with their spouses, with their friends.
Somebody sent me one just the other day. I got to repost it. It's so much fun. The title was "This Cornbread I Would Have Had to Let In," and it's a little bitty boy. He can't be more than 3 years old, and he's in overalls and he has on the hat, and he's knocking on the door and he's like, "Mama, let me in." It was great. It was great.
Did you? That's gonna. Well, it was gonna be one of my questions. Was that what is it like seeing the audience reaction? It's one thing.
It's great,
and also just. Not just the entertainment aspect of it or the recreation of aspect of it and the memes of it, but also people are going a bit deeper. People are digging into the layers of what you talked about, immigrants, about oppression, about economic oppression, about white supremacy, about discrimination. All of those things are layers as you peel back this onion that is this movie, right?
Yeah.
People are actually picking all of those pieces up. What's it been like watching that? And then have you been surprised by anything?
It's been great. Great question. It's been our own ride to watch because we're still in a cast group chat and we are still in contact with one another. So everybody is very pleasantly happy, not surprised, but happy by the audience response. Now, the thing that surprised me, I will say, is that the willingness for the public to go to this deeper level with the film and the fact that the film has landed and connected with the audience. You could make the best film ever. You could make the best podcast ever. And it could just not connect with people. It could be the wrong time. Something else could happen in the world that takes all the air out of the room. There's so many factors that have to hit for something to connect in the way that Sinners is connecting with audiences worldwide. And in this sense, it's been a very pleasant surprise of how many people are willing and able to have conversations with depth and nuance. Because what we've seen now over the past, I don't know, I'd probably say as far as like 15 years, is that most of the discussions in the public square are not nuanced. They're
Yeah.
all broad stroke. Everybody wants the easy answer if it's quick, as opposed to maybe a more complex explanation,
Hmm.
which may have some answers, but may still pose more questions. And in this film, the only people who seem to see the movie only once in the theater are the people who think it's just a vampire movie.
Right.
But if you're willing to engage and participate with the film, then what you see, it's inevitable that you will have a way of identifying with several elements of the film.
How does this connect to our lives today and everything? Because felt like that I am perhaps I overthink things or I look a bit deeper than most, but I felt like there was a lot of alignment with the themes and the ideas of the movie to what's happening in our lives today, particularly with our political climate, particularly with the way people are sort of using flawed logic to be in the darkness, act in the darkness, this slippery slope of where we are. Can you talk a little bit about the parallels and if if you think that this was purposely sort of created to have people really think deeper about things and have conversations about things?
So this morning, someone left a comment on a picture on my wall that said, just want to thank you. This is the film we really needed for right now. And it's very interesting to me because watching all of Coogler's films, I don't think anything in them is done by accident. And the young man is an artist of the highest order, and he's also a student. And that's a key thing. When you're on set with him, it's always like you're working with him and not for him, which is a great feeling as an artist. You know what I mean? Because it's collaborative. I've said it before, this is the most collaborative set that I've ever been on, but it's not even close. And I believe, and I've seen him say it, and he told me this when he showed me the first cut of the film, that this is his most personal film to date. It's a very intimate film based on his life experiences and things that he studied. I think that as the artists of the world, our job is to hold up a mirror to society and yet do so in a way that is inviting so that you spur people to think deeper. He's done this in a masterful way because the film is wildly entertaining. You can go to the film and just have a good time and eat a bucket of popcorn and just, and have some jump scares and all that. And yet at the same time, he's not telling you what to think. He's giving you historical fiction that if you think critically whatsoever, you can't help but make some of the parallels that are happening today, or to see how potentially we could return to some of these times. Because if you look at the scene when Smoke shows up to the Chow's
Convenience store.
Yeah, and they have two stores, and they're servicing both sides of the segregated community. And it is crazy. The concept is crazy. But is it? When we're dealing with a scenario where history and history, American history, is constantly being erased with various parts of it, would it be that difficult to see things in the near future, then in turn return to a time that we thought we'd put to sleep, And so as far as the film goes, I think that those parallels are evident, but what you take out of it is going to have a lot to do with your personal experience as well. I spoke to a couple people who told me I went in wanting to hate the film. And from an actor who was like, yeah, I auditioned and I didn't get in. I was like, it's going to be trash anyways, as like a protective mechanism for themselves, to a random Joe that was like, yeah, I didn't expect much from it. And the film is so stimulating on so many levels that it then in turn invites you to participate in a way that if you accept that invitation, you can't help but to be affected.
Yeah. And well, I mean, this is your challenge to go see it again if you've seen it once and didn't pick up any of the themes we were talking about. So go see it again. And I have to be honest, I don't like scary movies. I
Yeah.
don't like vampire movies. I don't like horror movies.
Yeah.
But also there's a part of me that realizes that there is something to a particular artist that has a history of making a point or making an effort to actually make a statement in his films
with their work.
With their work. So, you know, that made me obviously want to go see it, and was pleasantly surprised at how much of that history and story and depth was really just, it wasn't buried in the movie. It was in plain sight.
Oh, yeah.
And it's up to the audience to actually think, like you said, critically and pick up those pieces. A couple of things. Really interesting how important it is. You said you just went to an event with industry folks.
Yeah.
How important it is to in the way you show up within the industry and in the public in general. I mean, you get a lot of love from the public, from industry people and just regular people on the street.
Oh, way more from regular people than industry people.
And you were exactly the same with both people, right? It doesn't matter who it is. And you're so gracious
both
with
fans.
your...
I have two fans.
Yes.
And I'm the same with my mother and with my cousins. No, sorry.
The ability to be so gracious, it's really inspiring to watch from a distance. And that speaks to how your relationship with Coogler and how you met him and have it come full circle for you. Talk to me about that.
You know, that's funny. I hadn't thought about it that way. When I first got on, I can remember the day that I lost my anonymity. And that was November 8th, 2002. That was the day that 8 Mile came out. And that, by 1 o'clock, myself and another actor named Evan Jones, who was the fellow that played Cheddar Bob in 8 Mile, for the guy who shot himself, for people who don't remember, we went to lunch because we were roommates at the time. We went to lunch and people started to come up to us by 1 o'clock that day that it came out. And it was like, whoa, what is this? But it was interesting because I grew up being taught, my mother's a Sunday school teacher, and I grew up being taught that to whom much is given, much more is required. I am not a dream killer. I'm not interested in making anybody feel like things are less possible. I'll keep it square with you about what it takes that to get your dreams accomplished, which is usually difficult. But I'm also an optimist, and I believe in a variety of spiritual and physical things that take place that conspire in my favor in the world. And I believe that everyone should have someone to encourage them. Even better if it's somebody that they admire or that they recognize. So I had a point in my career that was a real, elevation and a breakthrough kind of moment, because I did 2 films back to back that came out on back to back weekends. And it was awesome. I did a film called The Express about Ernie Davis, the first Black Heisman Trophy winner. And then I did a film with Spike Lee called Miracle at St. Anna. And 2 totally separate roles. I had to lose 80 pounds between filming the 2 to be in them both. Spike trusted me. I went and I shot the film in Italy. It changed my life. It changed my experience, my travel experience, just the whole thing. So the films come out, and I received an award from the Pan-African Film Festival for a Rising Star Award. It's called the Canada Lee Award. And it was great. It was awesome. And so I brought my mother, I brought my brother. I think there was a few people in my family that were there. And a young man came up to me, as people are apt to do, and said, "Hey, man, I love your stuff, and one day we're going to work together." He's like, "I'm a student at SC, and I'm a film student, and man, I'm getting there." I said, "Awesome, do it." I was just encouraging, very slight. It cost me nothing. It cost me nothing whatsoever. Little did I know that young man was Ryan Coogler. And one day I was cleaning out the spare room in my house, and I found his card. And this is after Fruitvale Station and Creed had come out, and I was like, "Look at that was the kid." And then that's when I got the call about this film, and he shared with me that he had written it with me in mind. And it's crazy how life works, and it's just that we have this thing where we want to know the answers. I have it too, and we just don't know, because life is like a good movie. You don't know what direction this thing is heading, so you just have to try to make the best decisions that you can make to put the pathway down for you to make good choices that then allow good things to happen for you.
Again, another parallel about the movie,
100%.
right? And how your decisions really impact the trajectory of your life. And
100%.
Right.
It's funny because this is one of the things I've been speaking to people about, because there's this movement in the Black church where people are like, "Oh, that film is demonic. I'm not going to see no film called Sinners," especially it came out on Easter weekend.
Right.
And it's an interesting take, because, listen, I have my own set of sins. I don't have time to condemn other people and whatnot. Yet it's also selective that I'm seeing in a lot of this stuff, because in our film, the film is aptly titled Sinners. And it also, as per the word, the wages of sin is death. And these sinners, there's a lot of darkness and death that surrounds them in this film. So, you may want to give it a look before you give it the condemnation.
Yeah. And also there is, the and I'm not giving anything. Well, I am giving some things away.
Giving all kinds of stuff
I've
away.
been
What are
giving
you
all
talking
sorts
about?
of
This is
but it's been out.
This is an interview for people who've already seen the film.
Right. And if you haven't, maybe it would interest you to go see it, because maybe you thought it was the kind of movie that was not for you, but this conversation, creates interest. You want to go see it and pick up these elements and nuances that are in the film. This idea that two people survive, well, one person survives, right? This idea,
the night.
Right.
Okay.
Two people survive the night, but and there's a lot of conversation around why these two people. Well, one person survives.
One person survives.
One person.
What are you talking about? Yeah, one person survives the night.
Well, kind of.
I mean, that depends on if you're willing to look at the eternal darkness as survival. I guess that kind of just depends on how you feel about it.
But the point I'm making
it would
is
be three people that survive.
Right. The point I'm making is that there is something about the importance of following your path. There is that message of this God-given talent that is presented through the music, through the blues, through the spiritual element and presence of the music, and how really following that path is almost to path of survival, in a sense.
You could take it that route.
That was my interpretation of it.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on that?
Nice. Well, I think that from a biblical perspective, the devil was the angel of music who was cast out of heaven, who was a fallen angel. And I think that what we've seen throughout history is that music is the most powerful art form. Music, you talk about stuff like, Michael Jackson had grown men passing out when he walked by. This is like, what is it? It was just too much. You just couldn't take it. And this has to do with that power, because the music has a hypnotizing and a mesmerizing element.
Right.
It's something that people haven't talked about that I want to talk about right now, to be honest. And we'll go back to fully on that question. But, there's a piece in the movie when Remick, Joan, and Bert show up and they sing and try to sing their way into the juke.
Yes.
If you watch that closely, I haven't seen anybody speak about this, which I find interesting. If you watch that closely, almost everybody in the doorway who will decide whether or not they get in gets slightly hypnotized
Yes.
by the music.
Yes.
You know,
It's
it has like a
very
Greek epic, like a, you know what I mean, like an Odyssey, and you know what I mean, that sort of element to it.
yeah.
Like hearing the mermaid sing, and I hear and
Right.
I obey, you
Right.
know, that kind of
Yeah.
thing. And I think that speaks to the power of music. There's a reason why the song you love, you want to hear over and over again, hundreds and thousands and millions of times throughout your life. You'll play the same songs and they always have an effect on you. There's a power in that art. And I think that, back to what you were saying, you know, I think that the film in that sense has a great element and great story where Sammy has a clear gift, clear talent, and a special version of it. And making a choice on what you do when you recognize your gift and your purpose has drastic consequences, both good and bad.
In your life and the life of the people around you.
And this is what his father is trying to get him to understand, you know? And you see the choice he makes at the end. And it's a somewhat of a spin on the prodigal son parable in the Bible. It's very interesting.
Lots of layers and lots of information in this movie that you can decide to go as deep as you want or as light as you want. But, you know, speaking of, we've talked a lot about the sort of all of the meanings or ways we can interpret the film. Talk to me about how difficult it was to make it. I know you shot in New Orleans.
Yeah.
You faced a lot of weather issues.
Yes. This was a hard film to make.
And
this wasn't a walk by any means.
It also the IMAX portion of it, and the fact that you have Michael B. Jordan playing two characters at the same time.
Yeah, he's. I can't give Mike enough kudos for this. I think this is the best he's been in his career. This is the best we've seen him, and you know, I think this is really a jumping off point for somebody who's already had so much success. I really think this is still a breakout for him. And you know, filming in New Orleans in the summertime, I don't recommend. It is, especially if you're shooting a movie that takes
unpredictable
place outside.
Weather.
Well, that's the thing. It's predictable. It's predictably violent. The weather is aggressive, and it was 100 degrees with 90% humidity. We're wearing old wool suits and clothes, and man, my overalls were stinking consistently. And because we were shooting on a bayou. Just today, I posted this video of the alligator that walked on set. He walked right out of the bayou, right onto set.
Wow.
And it was a hard film to make, from the makeup to the prosthetics. The thing that I had to wear was like a muzzle. It was you couldn't really breathe well. You definitely couldn't eat or drink anything, and you couldn't really talk. And there was an element of that made me claustrophobic, and everybody was going through some version of that. And then on top of that, you wore these contact lenses that you couldn't see out of. They look awesome, but you couldn't see out of them. So when you would put these contacts in, people would have to guide you around so you didn't run into any equipment on set or fall down or anything like that. So it was definitely a situation where we suffered for the art. And it was hard, and I think that just makes it all the more sweet the way that it's being received. This is my first time ever filming in front of IMAX cameras, and they are very particular. Apparently, there's only 3 of the ones that we use. There's only 3 in use in the whole world, and it was a very big blessing and a favor for us to get a couple of the really, really high-end ones. Obviously, Ryan deserved that from his track record. And they're loud. We shot the movie on film, and the IMAX camera and the IMAX takes, there's a huge mag, but it has a short reel. There's a short amount of film inside of the mag. But it's very loud. So while you're filming and doing your lines, well, let me in, blah, blah, blah. It's really loud.
Very distracting.
It can be, but you get used to it. But this was a scenario where, if my gray hair didn't give it away, I've been around for a minute. And this was a scenario where me being around and shooting on film came back to really help me. because film has a limited amount of time and a limited amount of takes, so that it is not like digital where you just do it again or
Just keep rolling
nah.
endlessly.
And what it does is it makes each take really, really precious, and I love that.
And it forces everybody to be on top of their game,
That's what I
tip-top
mean
shape.
by it being very precious.
Yeah.
Each take, each element, and our fantastic director of photography, Autumn Arkapaw, she's, man, Autumn is the best. And this was a pioneering thing. She's the first woman to ever shoot on the 70 millimeter, the 65 Kodak IMAX platform. And she shot 3 films with Ryan. And there's, it works. This film, the visuals of this film are stunning.
Yeah.
Like if you get a chance to see it on IMAX, especially if you see it on IMAX in 70, you can almost smell Mississippi in this.
Yeah.
You can almost feel the heat. Like everything is so, just grainy and full, and I say it as objectively as I can being in it, but it's a real cinematic triumph, this one.
Right. Understanding the context of the fact that there's only 3 cameras in the world, the fact that not everybody has access to it, the fact that you have all of these challenges as you're shooting the movie, understanding the layers of that makes seeing it in IMAX at 70 millimeters even more significant and important, I think.
Well,
and
I tell you, I also believe, I don't mean to cut you off, but I also believe this is why the IMAX shows are sold out the way that they are.
Right.
Because the people who are seeing it in IMAX have experienced this immersive experience, because the screen is so big and the sound is so deep that it's all around you. And it gets in your heart. Like you can really feel this movie, and that really makes you have to talk about it and tell people about it and take your friend to go see it who may have been skeptical and and whatnot. There's a reason the film has been out now for a month and we're still talking about it all over the world. And I don't know when the last time was that happened.
And
in
also,
a positive way.
They just added another extra week of IMAX coming on the 15th. I don't know if there's any tickets available. I think it might already be sold out. It's sold out.
There's only 13 of these screens, these IMAX 70 screens. There's only 13 of them in the world. And I'm pretty sure, you can check the website, but I'm pretty sure that they're all sold out once they announced it.
You have talked about this film, but I want to talk about Naples to Italy. Naples to New York.
Yeah. Man, I love it.
Right before you shot Sinners, you did this movie that was shot in Italy. Talk to me about that one.
I love this film. It's based on the most famous film director in Italian history, and he changed cinema. His name Federico Fellini. This is based on a treatment that he wrote when he was young, him and his homeboy, that they never made. And his granddaughter, I do believe, found it in one of his old trunks. And another well-loved and accoladed Italian director named Gabriele Salvatore decided to adapt it and make it a film. And it is a period piece that is strangely relevant today. It is about 2 orphan children who are struggling in poverty after World War II and after Naples has been blown to bits. And they're street hustlers just trying to find enough to eat every day. And they stow away on a merchant ship on their trying to come to America to live the American dream.
And you play George.
I play George the cook that actually ends up kind of owing these kids. And the way it unfolds speaks a lot about what the American dream was perceived as around the world versus what it actually is. It speaks about immigration. It speaks about a lot of themes. And once again, it's family,
community.
And this is the big thing back to Sinners. The film is about community. And this film as well, Naples to New York, is about community. But I think that the big issue with the film is they made it almost like a fairy tale in a way, but dealing with very serious and adult themes.
Yeah.
And the film came out, was released in theaters in Italy. It did great business. It was one of the favorites of last year. It came out at the end of November, December in Italy. And we're just waiting on getting a release date worldwide. But
it was also nominated.
It was nominated for the Donatello Awards there. It was nominated for I think 4 or 5 different categories. It took home two. It took home a win for visual effects, and so it's accoladed. People in Italy love it. I get a lot of notes from the people in Italy and thanking me for my participation. I'm one of the only Americans in the film. It's myself, Thomas Arana, Pier Francesco Favino. Really, really solid piece. Yeah.
You know, I just was recently in Australia. I told you that in a roundabout way, discovered that a group of Italians hadn't gotten together at this hall and watched the movie, which is
It's awesome.
it's really awesome. It's about the power of community and word getting around and making sure that, you know.
There is nothing like word of mouth. Still, not in the digital age, not in the analog age, in any age. Word of mouth is the best marketing tool that's around, and both of the films that I've been in recently have had very strong word of mouth.
Yeah. So let's talk about the marketing aspect of this of Sinners,
Yeah.
and how strategic it was, in a sense where it wasn't just we're just going to roll out the marketing. There was organizations involved. For example, I went to a screening with the Armenian Film Society, and I know there was other organizations, whether it was entertainment or cultural organizations, that actually showed the movie and got people together to go see the movie. Talk to me a little bit about approaching getting the word out that particular way. It's like it's an addition to what's been done in the past. There's also this, it adds to the social media element, the people becoming ambassadors for the movie kind of element. Talk to me a little bit about how this was different this time.
I think that there was a multi-pronged approach, and I think that says a lot about Proximity, the group that produced the film, because they're very much so on the younger side when it comes to films of this scale. And I think that you saw the blueprint of the youth and the cultural diversity all over the film and all over the film's marketing. Because you have Sev, who's an Armenian, you have Ryan, who's a black man from Oakland, you have Ryan's wife, who is a black and Asian woman mixed from Oakland. You have another member, Rebecca, who's a Korean American. And I think that all of these elements, they understood that if I can just show the people and my people that this is actually a film that they're going to leave the theater with their chest up and their chin held high and proud about the movie, that they will then, just like you said, become ambassadors and have a groundswell of support. Because my concern, in all honesty, before the film came out, my concern about the film was just getting the first wave of people to the theater. Because I can't remember the last time I was so confident in the quality of every aspect of a film. As an actor, this film has something that I never see, which is, I believe each and every person that comes on screen. And that is not the case for me normally. And in this case, and sometimes, unfortunately, I've been in films where I'm the one that I don't believe, and I watch them like,
telling on yourself,
they got
are you?
me?
Telling on yourself.
I'm the one that's no good in this one? And it's terrible. But in this, it's unfortunate.
It takes incredible amount of self-awareness to have that realization. I
could have been better.
Too. I'm just bad on some days.
Yes, I could have been better. I could have been better. I didn't know it, but I could have been better. And I've apologized to certain directors and this and the other. Hey man, you know what? I got you on that one. I let you down. But this film, in that, the different departments, the camera department, the acting squad, the production department, the special effects, the music department, everybody's at the top of their game on this one. And so I felt like if we could just get people in the first wave, the people will do the work and the film will do the work, and the people will then tell everybody, no. This is movie magic. Like, this is that feeling that inspires you. If you see a film like this is the kind of piece that makes you say, I want to be in the movies. How do they do that? Like, I want to, whatever element, whether
Speaking of which,
I want to be an actor, I want to be whatever it is.
You've been getting a lot of that, right? Like, if people are in your DM asking questions about, how do I do this? How do I become an actor? How do I
forget about it.
Talk to me about that.
It's inspirational. The film is inspirational, and for somehow or another, Cornbread has become very inspirational to people, and I think it has to do with the relatability. My career, my entire career, I've been about being the everyman. people come up to me and they say, man, you remind me of my cousin. You remind me of my brother. You remind me of my son. You remind me of my nephew. You remind me, that kind of thing. And I think in that, there's a familiarity with the character that I play, because he represents laborers, manual laborers, regular people who are out here working for their livelihood. And that's how he gets mixed up in this nonsense. He's working and tries to get away from the confusion that he knows that comes with the Smokestack twins. But his wife is intrigued by the flash and dash of the car that Stack shows up in, by the promise of big money, and potentially by the promise of some freak nasty when after he gets the money, which unfortunately,
Which,
if
by
you've
the
seen
way,
the film, it's
there's
wah, wah, wah.
there's a lot of social media stuff, but people are really mad that Cornbread
People are really
didn't get
mad.
a share.
People really mad. Cornbread got cheated. I want to tell you something. It's funny, but I also think that's why people identify with the character, because a lot of people feel cheated nowadays in life. A lot of people are working hard. They know that they wake up early and they go to work all day, and they come home and their feet hurt and their hips hurt and their knees hurt and their back hurts,
Right.
and they still don't feel like they can get ahead. And I really think that that's part of what has made people identify with the character of Cornbread, because he got the raw deal.
He got the short end of the stick.
He did.
Speaking of Cornbread, there is so much of, and I don't know if I'm phrasing this incorrectly, but there's so much of you in this character. There's so much of your experience and your past.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about how you drew from that to bring Cornbread to life.
Well, for me, the big thing was and is that Cornbread is a sharecropper. When you meet him, he's in the fields picking cotton with his wife, his pregnant wife. And the film is set in 1932 in Mississippi. And in 1932 in Mississippi, my grandfather was a sharecropper in Mississippi, which, for those people who don't know, sharecropping was one step out of slavery, in which people oftentimes who had their families had formerly been enslaved on these plantations were promised a piece of the land as long as they worked the land, and they weren't paid, but they were promised a piece of the land. Or if they were paid a nominal sum. So in that, my grandfather was a sharecropper. I knew my grandfather. My grandfather built his home that I visited several times with his own hands, him and his wife. And my father is the oldest son of my grandfather. And my father in the 40s picked cotton in Mississippi. And so in that, for me to then play a sharecropper in the film, where my work is not only voluntary, but well compensated, is a massive testament to the progress that we've made as a society and as a community. But also, it is so important to have an understanding that these are real people. These aren't flattened, one-dimensional characters. Oftentimes, what happens, I think, when people who are not descendants of, or people with whom they have a direct connection to these sort of historical stories tell those stories, a lot of nuance is lost. And in that, the characters get flattened out, and it becomes a version of trauma porn, if you will. This isn't that. And part of that is because Ryan's family is from Mississippi. And this is what drew him to write the piece about his people. So he and I had no way of knowing that prior to really knowing each other. But our families had similar stories on why he and I are both from California. And part of the Great Migration out of the South in that time period. And so for me to be able to portray a version of my uncles, my aunts, my father, and my grandfather was a great honor. And I think I do it proudly, and I speak about it openly, because in the church they have a phrase that is, you tell the truth and shame the devil. And the thing is that part of the issue with the ugliness and the darkness of racism and a lot of the history that we have in this country is they want to attach shame to the people who were victimized. They want you to be ashamed of your people being enslaved or working. And there's no shame in that. My grandfather was an honorable man. He was well respected and he was a stud. And so I have no shame in that historical component of it. And, you know, the other day I watched the film with my father and my uncle, and it was, I mean, one of the biggest treats of my life, to be honest, because my father's 86 now. He's about to turn 87. And I mean, him and his little brother were in the film like kids watching a movie. And so much of the film was historically accurate visually, from the oil lamps to the actual cotton fields, et cetera, to the cars, to the clothes. It transported them. And then, you know, afterwards we had hours long conversations about it. So I mean, the film has given me so much on a personal level that all of the commercial success and everything is just gravy.
Yeah. And, you know, it's also important to remember that seems like when you talk about my grandfather was in the field and I get to do it and well compensated, it seems like
a long time ago.
It seems like a lot of progress, but it wasn't really that long ago.
No,
right?
no. That's why I make it a point to say I knew my grandfather.
Right.
These aren't stories that I heard, you know, these aren't stories that I heard from yesteryear.
Right.
I knew my grandfather personally.
But also the significance of today's time and what we're seeing today about what's happening in the world.
Well, and the revisionist history that's going on.
And the revisionist history that's going on. And how it's not that hard to people who have never lived it and experienced it. It's not that hard for things to turn sideways or upside down.
No.
So,
and a key pathway towards things going the wrong way is a lack of historical context,
right,
and a lack of education about the truth and the truth of the past. And so if we can't ever face that sort of truth, it's going to be almost impossible for us to move forward.
Yeah. Go see the movie if you haven't seen it. I want to ask you one last question before we wrap this up.
Okay.
From a creative standpoint, I know that you get a lot of questions about becoming an actor, producing a movie, creating a movie, just as a creative. I do too. Some words of advice for anyone who finds themselves having this creative need to do something or be something. Any suggestions? Because breaking into the business is hard.
You know, and it's funny because in some ways it's harder now than ever, and in other ways breaking into the business is easier now than ever. It's a different animal than it was when I got started 20 years ago. I tell people now that if you have creative urges and your creative juices are flowing, make sure that you do something. It's not enough to talk about it, and it's not enough to let perfection be the enemy of progress. You have to make stuff. Now, in your pocket, you have more technology than the greatest filmmakers of all time had for 80 years, 90 years. And in that, you have the means to create something. Is it going to be the best thing you ever make? No, because it's going to be the first thing you ever make.
Right.
Or the second thing. And very rarely are we as humans good at anything the first time we do it. So I would say, put yourself out there. The game in Hollywood used to be to go to Hollywood or go to New York and convince a bunch of strangers to hire you. And I think that game has now been placed on its head. I think it's the other way around. I think that you have access to the entirety of the world's community, of whatever the specifics of the niche of your community are, right in your pocket or right on your computer screen. And what you can do is you can create material for that community. And once that community starts to see themselves represented, you will have your own community of consumers. And after that, the big conglomerates in Hollywood, New York, et cetera, they'll come looking for you. And then it'll be your choice whether or not you actually want to continue with them or if you want to continue on your independent path. I think it's a different path now, but in a lot of ways, I think it's a lot more liberated It's a lot freer, the independent path, because if you're the person making your materials, you need to sell a lot less of it for it to be successful.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's made access a lot easier, which
It's unbelievable.
we didn't have that before.
Yeah.
And one more thing I add to that is that you never really know what will resonate, because you can make
100%.
something completely totally imperfect and on your in your own standards, and it just happens to be the right time, the right situation, the right environment, the right all of those things, and then all of a sudden it just goes viral, or it strikes a nerve.
Yeah.
And
it might not even be when you first release it. It
Right.
might be well after.
And you never really know. Every time I've done something like that, I've had in my mind who will then come, but it's never the people it's never that group
that you visualize to actually do it. Now, I'll say something else about that. It's funny you said, because I thought you were going somewhere else, which is, I know in my experience, this is how it's been. You never know who's watching.
That's true too.
So you should always put forward your best foot, but you never know how far your efforts are going to reach. But you can guarantee they won't reach far at all if you never actually hit record.
Right.
And you never actually make anything.
True.
You know?
Thank you for spending the afternoon with us.
No problem. This is went quickly.
I know, right? It's gone pretty fast. Sinners has made $240 million worldwide at last check. And it's on track to break some records.
Yeah.
I looked it up. It's 27th highest ranking movie of horror movies.
Really?
Did you know that?
I did know that.
According to,
I know that it had a monster record, a modern record for the lack of drop off from week to week,
Right.
which just speaks to repeat business and strong word of mouth.
and we've got another week of IMAX coming up,
Yep.
and it'll be in theaters for some time. So if you haven't seen it, or if you want to support it, or if you want to, make your own sort of version of the movie, or
You got to see it before you can make your own parody.
Exactly. So go do that. Thank you for joining us. I know you spent a lot of time in Glendale.
Yeah.
Tell me about being among my people.
I mean, I've never had a problem with being in Glendale. The tremendous food. I mean, shout out to Armin and Mini Kebab.
That's right.
To my experience, I found that the Armenian people share a lot in common with every history of people who have ever been oppressed. And in that, there is a desire for more. There's a chip on the shoulder. And I don't have a problem with that. There's an underdog mentality that I greatly appreciate. So for me,
That is true.
I'm not mad at Glendale on any level, except for the heat. I mean, it's a little too hot sometimes.
And the speeders.
Yeah.
Can we slow down, folks? Can we slow down on Glen Oaks? We're not racing anymore.
We're not?
No.
Oh, okay.
I'm
good.
not. Thank you for being with us. Anything we should look forward to other than what's your next thing?
I don't know. Well, it'll come though. When it does, I get out of the house less than I used to now. So when it comes, I like to make it count.
Okay. Thanks for being with us. Another edition of the Silva Harapetian Show. We'll see you next time.